Hey there! Welcome to Chief's Shop and to Hey Chief, where I answer your woodworking and project questions. In this episode, I'm going to talk about some saw blades and a handsaw miter box, and also an issue with having tight space and using a pocket hole screw and assembly. So I'll start off with that one. Help! I need some ideas. I'm building a cubby storage area for my basement. I drew up my plans, pre-cut all the material, used the Kreg jig to drill all of my holes. I went to assemble the pieces, and after installing the shelves on one leg, I went to install the second leg, and I could not get my drill in the cubby, quote unquote. It is 14 inches by 11 inches, which will not allow me the angle or room to screw in the screws. Any ideas? Well, the problem that you ran into, you're using probably this square drive bit, which is very long. By the time you add in your drill, you're talking about a lot of space. Your first option is use the shorter square drive bit, which dramatically reduces the amount of space required to fit your drill and your bit in. Now, sometimes that's not going to allow it. You talk about adding this to a drill, and if your space is 11 inches, this is right at, for this particular drill, this is right at about 11 1/4 inches space from the end of the drill to the driving bit. So that may not help you either. So one option for that is to try a right angle attachment for your drill bit, or for your drill. And this is pretty basic design here on this one. It's got a little handle here, obviously, but just fits in just like a bit would. And then you can put your bit in here, and this would allow you to a much shorter space. We're talking about from here to here to drive in a screw. And if that doesn't work, it doesn't give you enough space, I've got a little trick I've used from time to time. The square drive bit will fit into a 1/4 inch socket, and you can take that, obviously, put it into on a little socket wrench, and now you can go into a really small space. Now, it's going to take a lot more work to do it this way, but it'll allow you to fit in that tiny space. It's not as ideal. You don't necessarily have the torque or the speed that you want, but obviously it slips out pretty easily. But it'll hold, and it'll allow you to drive it in that small space. So I think that's a couple little options there. The number one thing to do, though, is to look at your design prior to cutting and drilling holes and everything, and allow for that space. Sometimes what I do is instead of maybe one end of something using pocket hole screws, pocket hole joinery, is that I'll just either nail it or drive screws from the outside if I don't have enough space. It's for a Kreg pocket hole joinery purist, that's not the most ideal situation, but sometimes there's no way you can avoid it, and there's no crime in that. It's okay to do that. Okay, my next question comes from someone new to woodworking, and they say, okay, I'm new to woodworking, and when I try to cut with a handsaw, I can't afford a table saw or a miter saw, my cuts are not 90 degrees, or not the 90 degrees that I'm hoping for. The thickness is always at a slant. Do you have any tips? Well, very basic thing to get would be a miter box, and this is the relatively inexpensive Stanley model, pretty much bottom of the line that you can get. This will help you secure a board in place, and with the little slot openings, it keeps your blade pretty much vertically straight. That sounds like the problem that you're having. This little kit, it's not very expensive, and it includes these little pins that can be used to clamp the wood in place while you're cutting. I don't know what type of saw you're trying to use, but the saws that come with these miter kits have a little reinforcing bar here, which will help keep that blade straight from wobbling too. And that probably could be some of your issue, where you're just working at it and you're getting a little bit of some play in there. The number one tip is to take your time and practice until you get it. And my last question is about saw blades for primarily for a table saw. And this person just got a new DeWalt saw, and for them it's a Cadillac, they say. Anyways, they finally finished getting everything set up, and she's anxious to use it, but it came with a 24 tooth blade, and she's thinking about changing that, and she asked if I had any suggestions. Well, a 24 tooth blade is for ripping. Okay, so the fewer teeth you have on a blade, the faster the blade will go through the wood, and when you're ripping, you want it to go through a little faster. That's on the extreme end for ripping, and particularly for construction grade. So you're talking about dimensional lumber, 2x lumber. That's really what you want to get. Now, for all purpose, you want to step up into a lot of times what they call a combination blade. Here, this is a 40 tooth blade, and this is still primarily for ripping. You can do some cross cutting with it. A combination blade, you're getting into a 50 tooth blade, and this is still good for ripping, but it works better on cross cutting. So as an all-purpose blade, a 50 tooth blade is probably pretty good for you. You step on up, getting into and this is a DeWalt blade, but a 60 tooth blade here, which they call it a fine crosscut blade. Okay, they can say that. 60 tooth blade is pretty good for that. Stepping on up to an 80 tooth blade. This is considered an ultra fine crosscut. Really don't want to do ripping with this, because it will bog down, it will heat up, and your saw, if it has a shut off, automatic shut off on it, the little trip, it will go if you start ripping into thicker material with this, for sure. And even on up, you can keep on going up, but I have a 200 tooth blade that I will use. This one's primarily been slated for plywood. That's what it's recommended for. And if I'm doing some really fine precision work where I don't need to be trying to cover up my mistakes, I really want it to be perfect, and particularly on 1/4 inch plywood, I'll pull this blade out and use it there. So you have a lot of options, and when you are working on, for a table saw, when you're on a chop saw, a miter saw, you're cross-cutting on it. So you want to make sure that you've got probably a finer tooth blade, so go on up. But I switch out blades all the time, so you really want to be accepting in the mindset that you're going to need to switch blades out for your application. There's really not a perfect blade for every to use across the board on every application. So I recommend having a set of blades, and you can spend a lot of money. This ultra fine crosscut is a silver coated Avanti blade, and it's not cheap, and you can get into some. It's made by Freud, but Freud, you can get into some very high end expensive blades. If your budget allows, great. But I would always make sure that you've got on hand. The 24 tooth blade is great for, like I said, ripping dimensional lumber. If you're not doing that, step on up to a 40. Okay, you'll be fine there. Combination blade is great to have on there a lot of times. Now, I admit I do some cross cuts on some lower tooth blades. It'll work. So there's no, there's nothing saying you can't do that. But I recommend that you get a set of blades and you regularly switch them in and out. And you want to take a blade out every so often anyway and clean it. I've pretty bad here. There's a blade or two here I've got that has a pretty good buildup of pitch on it, and needs to be cleaned up, needs to soak in a solution to get that off. So, you know, if you sit there and just have one blade and that's all you use, you know, eventually, number one, it's going to get dull. Number two, it'll just have a buildup on it. And when that happens, a duller blade with buildup on it is not going to cut as effectively. It's going to heat up and you're going to have some issues. So, but to sum up, get a series of blades. Think about the application that you're needing the blades for, and switch those blades out when you need it. Well, I hope you found this helpful, and I recommend that you go to my website, chiefshop.com, and look at plans and tips and other how-tos I've got on there. And, as I always like to say at the end of these videos, time to get off the computer and into the shop and make some sawdust.